Welcome back. Just before the break, we were talking about China and, as some people say it, flexing its economic muscles in Southeast Asia. Well, we will leave China, we'll come back to London, and we'll talk about democracy in this segment, inshallah. Mr. Badrul, Ahsan, you have been writing about democracy and how it is being practiced in so many countries. But what is democracy? This looks like, seems like, I mean, it's just very good to think, imagine that we can achieve a country of the people, for the people, and by the people. But looks like an utopian idea. Is it achievable? And is it achievable anywhere, and particularly in Southeast Asia and in countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh? Do you think so?
Well, of course, democracy is a very good idea, and well, democracy should be there. But then again, I have my questions also. The kind of democracy that is practiced in the West, in the UK and the United States and Europe, can we really, transplant this kind of democracy in our part of the world? For example, say in our part, if I'm referring to Bangladesh, my own country, no, we have had so many ups and downs, and we keep talking about democracy, which is, of course, our right.
Well, that's the goal, isn't it? We're trying to go towards that.
That's the goal. But then, again, there are some preconditions which should be attached to democracy. For example, the level of education of the people, how we prepare them. By education, I do not mean that they should go to college or university,
no,
but the political education. How much of that political education has been
awareness?
That sense of awareness has been created among our people. Now, which is when I go back to the 1960s and early 1970s, because at that time, during the movement for regional autonomy by the Awami League leadership, by Bangabandhu and his colleagues, specifically from 1966, when the 6 points were first articulated, all the way up to liberation, the country, the nation, in fact, it was fully aware of its rights. So to what extent have we been able to hold on to those rights? Because after that, after 1975, we have seen the advent of two military dictators. Our country, Bangladesh, was supposed to be a different place. We fought against Pakistan, and one of the reasons that we fought against Pakistan was this continuity of military rule and deprivation of democracy. But then we fell into the same trap. Then again, see, apart from these two stages of military rule, General Ziaur Rahman and General Hussain Muhammad Ershad, again, we have had politicians taking over the country through elections. But then I feel that, see, democracy, in the way we mean it, the right to free expression, the right to express my views, the right to be, right to dissent from you. You may not agree with me, but I will have to respect your opinion. That sense of liberal democracy has somehow gone missing. And what we have is, I mean, if you, for want of any other term, we could call it illiberal democracy. Yes, we have democracy, but then if it is illiberal, if democracy means I am right and the person who is opposed to me is not right, is wrong, or when power changes, when the tables are turned, again it's the same cycle we go on and on about. I think that is problematic. So what we need to do, what our political leadership and see, both in all the major political parties and also our civil society, they need to educate people. We need to educate people on the spirit of tolerance. What I see in Bangladesh is a gradual decline of tolerance. If we look at the language our politicians use in their speeches, in their addresses, in their comments, on television talk shows, on all sides of the spectrum.
They're very personal.
Yeah, they're very personal, and you get concerned. You're really concerned. For example, again, to go back to the early stages, when I talk of Bangabandhu, when I talk of Tajuddin Ahmed, when I talk of those three other national leaders, Syed Neaz Islam, A.H.M. Kamruzaman, and Captain Mansur Ali, they were politicians who actually not only understood the pulse of the people, they went to all corners of the country, and they read a lot. See, they read a lot, and they kept in touch with political opinion or political developments in other parts of the world.
We had such wonderful leaders.
Yes.
See, so I know that they were there for very short time. See, but Did we go wrong somewhere? We did not learn anything from them, or did they fail to teach or pass it on to their future leaders? Because there was no second tier of leadership there at that moment, because they were there just for a very short time.
The tragedy for us in Bangladesh is that, see, in what happened in 1975 was something you can't really explain, or you can't really politically and morally accept. You can't even accept it, because here was a coup, a violent coup, and all sorts of conspiracies was going on. And the unfortunate fact is nobody had an idea of what was happening, although there were reports. For example, let's take Bangabandhu. He was constantly warned about the conspiracy that was shaping up against him. But then, being Bangabandhu, he could never believe that he would die at the hands of his fellow Bengalis. Then, so he was removed by this vast web of conspiracy. Then the next generation, the leaders who could have taken over from him, Syed Neaz Ahmad, Tajuddin, and Kamruzaman, Mansur Ali, they too were wiped out. So that was when an entire vacuum was created.
Have you done any thinking about this? What was the conspiracy? I mean, it's such a vast conspiracy, but who were the real pullers?
This has also always been my question, and also a question from others also. Bangabandhu's trial, the trial of Bangabandhu's assassins has taken place. Some of them have gone to the gallows, some others are absconding, fine. But then there was also a huge conspiracy. So it's not only proper to say that these military officers were involved. They were now, as the days go by, we are getting increasingly new information in the sense that civilians within Bangabandhu's government, Khandaqar Mushtaq, for example, they sent out feelers to senior army people as early as November 1974, wanting to know if they could be part of the conspiracy. So, and the message went specifically to General Zia, and he apparently he did not wish to be part of any conspiracy, but neither did he encourage it. Now that also tells you something about the state of things at that time. Here was the Deputy Chief of Army Staff in the know about a conspiracy that is brewing, and he does not inform the government. And again in March, the same thing happened.
They didn't have DGFI then.
They didn't have, no, they didn't have, but then they had the NSI, and everybody was there. And what really is troubling, and I have always written about it, see, Bangabandhu was murdered early in the morning, before these morning Fajr prayers. Yeah. And then for the next 4 to 5 hours, his remains, his body, and the bodies of all his family members, and of course in other places, Abdul Rab Sarniabat and Sheikh Fazlul Moni, they lay there. And in any democratic country, in any properly established democratic country, the military, because this coup was carried out by a bunch of majors and lieutenant colonels and colonels. Right. So there were other forces. For example, the army chief was there, and the BDR chief was there, the Rakhi chief was there. They could have taken action and actually prevented the government from collapsing. Bangabandhu was assassinated. Okay, nothing could be done, but they could have at least acted in such a manner that would have kept the government in office. Syed Neaz Ahmad was vice president at that time. He could have been made president or acting president, but nobody acted. And in 4 to 5 hours time, you could see all these officers, all these leading figures in the armed forces, they turn up at Khandaqar Mushtaq's swearing in, and they pledge loyalty to him. Now this gives me the impression that, why didn't these people act? Now later on, you see, we have heard so many. For example, the army chief at that time, General Shafiullah, he later on became High Commissioner here at the UK, as you know, and he has been explaining things in his own way. But then the question is, say, when your loyalty was demanded, when action was demanded, why didn't you act? Nobody acted, and then so. I mean, it's inconceivable.
All of them have their own excuses.
And now the strangest thing is, when you talk to them, everybody gives his own explanations. But then how do you take those explanations? Because see, in the moment of reckoning, you were not there. See?
True.
And General Shafiullah is reported to have asked Bangabandhu, because he was the last person to whom Bangabandhu reportedly talked before his telephone lines were cut. And he said, Shafiullah, your forces have attacked me, send a force quickly. And then Shafiullah said, can you come out of the house, sir? Now, can you imagine this kind of question? The father of the nation, the founder of the country, the president of the country, you don't expect him to jump over a wall and escape. Bangabandhu has never escaped, because every time when the Pakistanis came to arrest him, he was there. Even in his last few minutes, he was there because these officers first told him that they would like him to accompany them.
He came and faced them.
He came and faced them. So I mean, when you talk about our democracy, I'm not quite sure how democracy will shape up eventually in Bangladesh. We'd like to have a liberal democracy, but then we also have these fundamentalists coming up. And again, not just fundamentalists, these fundamentalists are being pandered to by people from whom we don't expect such pandering. Again, you see General Ershad. He removed an elected government in 1982, General Justice Abdul Sattar's government. Now, that was a properly elected government. Only a few months earlier, November 1981, he had been elected president, defeating Dr. Kamal Hussain, who was then in the Awami League. But then in March 1982, he was removed, and he took over for no rhyme or reason. And then, of course, you can also cite all those killings which took place in the Bangladesh army from, let's say, from 7th November, General Khalid Musharraf and the others, and it went all the way up to September 1981, when 13 military officers who were charged with taking part in Zia's assassination were also executed. But then everything is
was there a trial of theirs?
Those a trial of these officers, and most of these officers, especially one of them, Brigadier Mohsinuddin, his name was at the top of the list. He wrote a letter before his execution to his wife. He said clearly, I don't know why I have been arrested. I don't know why I'm being tried. I've had nothing to do with General Zia's assassination. And then again, when General Manzoor was arrested, say in Chittagong after his coup failed. But apparently General Manzoor didn't launch the coup. It happened, these young officers, they went and killed General Zia. And then General Manzoor took it upon himself to retrieve the situation in as best a way as he could. So when he was arrested, General Manzoor had wanted to have, before he was arrested, he wanted to talk to General Ershad, who was the army chief at that time. Ershad refused to talk to him. Now you have the question, why did he want to talk to General Ershad, and why did General Ershad refuse to talk to him? When he was arrested, he wanted himself to be handed over to the police, not to the army, because he was afraid something would happen to me. And his fears came out true, because he was handed over to these military officers, and somebody from some other military officer was sent from Dhaka, and then he was killed. So democracy, if we mean to have democracy, we need to go back to rule of law. And if we need to go back to rule of law, there are all these trials that have to be dealt with. A closure must come to certain issues that we still haven't resolved. Bangabandhu's assassins have been tried. Now, what should happen now, as far as I think, as my personal point of view, which I believe a lot of other people will hopefully share, there's also the fact that investigations should also be carried out into the role of civilians in his assassination, because I once asked leaders of the government back in the 1990s, the first Awami League government, which was elected in 1996, why wasn't Khandakar Mushtaq put on trial? Right. By that time, Khandakar Mushtaq was dead, and I was told that he's dead. My answer was that even if people are dead, you can put them on posthumous trial. Now I believe the government is actually thinking along those lines. Now that has to be resolved. The killings of General Khalid Musharraf, then we have the two other officers who died with him, Major Haider and Colonel Najm Huda. That has never been resolved. Nobody has taken the initiative. That go there. General Manzoor's killing. All these, so many killings that have gone on, unless we, I think I can speak of democracy sitting in London.
Sir, another break time.
Yes.
When we come back, we'll pick up the thread again. Right. Thank you for being with us. I hope that you're enjoying, and we'll come back soon after this short break. Thank you.